On today's Transport Evolved, CHAdeMO DC quick charging explodes all around the world. Tesla's third generation electric car won't be made of aluminium. And we talk about two very, very expensive plug-in hybrids. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 206 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Independence Day 2014. That's July 4th for those who don't know. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and joining me today, no Americans, because they're all out doing things with fireworks and celebrating kicking us Brits out of the country. Isn't that right, Mr. Michael Thwaite? Welcome to the show.
All what it's all about. I haven't quite got the hang of this July 4th thing, so here I am on Transport Evolved.
And you live in New Jersey in the United States of America. Come on.
I'm in the United States of America. I'm not fully integrated yet, so I haven't quite got that whole rah, let's get rid of the Brits.
So how long have you lived in the States? It must be like 17 years?
No. Close.
Close?
A dozen. Over 12 years. Yeah.
12 years in the United States. And you still have more electric cars than anybody else I know. For those who don't know, Vice President of Plug-in America for the first time this year. And also, we like to call you, you're kind of a staff member at Transport Evolved, and you kind of our silent staff member. You come out occasionally with some great articles that you give us when you have 5 minutes. But you also help behind the scenes a lot, don't you? Tell us about what you do at Transport Evolved.
Well, I'm the engineer, so I'm the guy spannering the servers and making sure that when you click on transportevolved.com, a page really comes up. That's me.
But don't give us any DDoS attacks, because that would make...
Yeah, I don't want to be tested. Thanks.
Michael's good.
Appreciate that.
We don't need to prove that he's good. We know that he's good. Okay, so current Thwaite fleet at the moment includes... What? We've got a Tesla Roadster, which is kind of your collector car, isn't it? Collector car, stroke fun car.
Yeah, that used to be my day job. That used to be my
day job.
My day job. Yeah, driving that around. My commuter car. So I used to use that every single day of the year. You know, snow, summer, winter, the whole thing. But you know what? It's some of the roads here are pretty grim. So that got wheeled into the corner of the garage and comes out for best, which is kind of nice actually, because now I really enjoy driving it. Day to day, it's a Ford Focus electric. Which I kind of like actually. It's got a lot of things to like about it as that car. I don't know do you guys have it over in the UK yet?
Not really. And Ford has some in the UK, but they won't let me drive it. They won't let anybody drive it unless you live within like 20 miles of the M25. I mean, they're that precious about it. They don't bring it outside of the M25 circle. So I haven't really driven it. I've driven it obviously on the continent in Europe. Yeah. And I saw yours when I came to see you earlier this year.
Yeah,
but you know, it's not really caught on over here.
That's a shame, because it's got a place. I mean, you know, if you were a gas car driver and you were frightened of what an electric car might feel like, a Ford Focus electric would do you just right, because it just drives just like a gas car. You know, there's creep when you take your foot off the brake. It doesn't have a lot of regen. But at the same time, you know, it's quiet and smooth, and it's nice. I enjoy it actually. I enjoy driving that. But
and you've also recently you've got a Mitsubishi iMeave.
Yeah, we have an iMeave.
You kind of use that as your children's car, right?
Well, you know what? They love it. They love knocking around in the iMeave because it's not like the dad's car. So I think they kind of like it because of that, and it kind of looks funky. I mean, I like it too. I mean, it is. You know, it's funny. You know what? The iMeave is the most reliable EV I think I've ever encountered. I shouldn't say that because that could be
really,
fatal.
Really.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many EVs do you know that haven't had some kind of recall or technical issue or stop safely now or drivetrain malfunction or 12-volt battery problem, or I could go on.
It is true. And this week I've been driving the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid, and I don't know if you heard last week on the show, I was kind of a bit about it, and it only just landed on my driveway. Well, it went back today, and I have to say I was really sad to see it go. It kind of grew on me. Mitsubishi says the 106 miles in if you do 106 mile trips or less, the Outlander plug-in hybrid is more fuel efficient than the diesel version of the Outlander. If you do longer distance trips on a regular basis, then you're better off buying the petrol or diesel version. But round town, I mean, I was getting 25 miles per charge. You know, I don't buy the 32.5 miles that Mitsubishi UK says you can get out of it. I've not managed to do that. But it's a very versatile vehicle, CHAdeMO quick charging capabilities. The downside about the CHAdeMO is, despite it only having a 12 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is half the size of the Nissan Leafs, it still takes the same time to charge from empty to 80%, because the Outlander plug-in hybrid throttles the charge current to 50 amps.
Yeah,
presumably to prepare it to preserve the battery.
Well, yes. I mean, if it's a small battery, you know, there's some chemical reasons why you can't just shove huge amounts of power in it. In fact, the bigger the battery, usually the faster, you know, the more current you can put through the whole pack, and depending on how it's arranged electrically, you know, determines how fast you can charge it, and of course the cells as well. That's fascinating. But yeah, the i3 is the car that's proving to be the odd one of our bunch.
So you bought it. You were one of the first in the country to get an i3, just by coincidence.
We were,
but it was the car that you. I mean, we didn't really talk about this, but you were very open with us about it off air and said, "Look, I don't know if I even want this car." So how did that happen? How did you go from, like, we were obviously, you had the Active E program. You were part of that. And you enjoyed that, and you really didn't want to hand the Active E back, and you drove the i3 and weren't particularly keen on it, and neither was your wife. And then suddenly,
it's there in the driveway.
Suddenly, it's there on your driveway. How did that happen?
Well, you know, briefly, you're absolutely right. We didn't really want an i3. We took a test drive. You know, we got invited along to all the different, BMW events, and It just didn't really light anything up. You know, we thought, yeah, it's smart, it's pretty quick, it's looks kind of interesting, but, you know, it doesn't ride particularly brilliantly. And the rumor is it was going to be $800 a month, and there was just no way that we were going to pay $800 a month when, you know, cars like the the Ford were paying less than $200 a month US. So we'd written it off, actually, but we didn't want to let go to the Active E because we kind of like that car, and it's been, you know, bar I think one glitch one or two glitches we've had in its first few months, it's been absolutely solid, totally reliable, cost absolutely nothing to run but the electricity, not even tires, and just, you know, it was smooth, fast, quiet, all those things you love about electric cars. So we had no reason to get an i3. However, BMW said, you have to bring the Active E back unless you put your name down for an i3. Well, guess what? There was no deposit to go down. There was no firm commitment, no nothing. So why wouldn't you? So, of course, we made the mistake. Well, no, in retrospect, it was the right thing to do. We ordered ourselves an i3 and figured, you know what, if there's an i3 going to come into the country, let's make it a good one. So what we did was we basically ticked pretty much every box we could find on the option list. I mean, why did we care? We weren't going to buy it. And so we had, yes, we'll have metallic paint, we'll have self-parking, we'll have this, we'll have that. Oh, yes, let's have some of that. Let's have two of those. And so we kitted it out.
Right.
And then sat back and kind of watched the i3 community talking about when their car were going to be delivered and what features was it going to have and was it true about this and that and all the other. And we were completely out of the picture until one day on the Facebook pages for the i3, there's a picture of a car that's our spec at our dealer. And we looked at it and we thought, well, could that be ours? And then we sort of looked at it a bit more because we'd spec the big wheels and the silver paint, and we it kind of looked pretty cool. So, but we still couldn't afford it. There's no way we were affording $800 a month. We went for a meetup at Tom Malogny's restaurant, Norna's, and with all the other Active E guys. And the dealer arrived, our sales guy arrived, and I had to sort of confess to him, I'm sorry, we can't afford it. And he looks me in the eye and goes, nods sagely and goes, yes, you can. So we were like,
okay.
no, we can't. And he goes, how much do you want to pay? I'm like, well, that's a silly question. It'd be great if we could have it for like the same money as we pay for the Active E.
Yeah.
And he goes, come and see me tomorrow. We'll get you in that car.
It out.
He did, yeah.
Wow.
And so we put, when we saw it and we realized, this. Do you know what the funny thing is? And I've said this before. It's a little bit like tuning a musical instrument.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You get it slightly off, and it's dreadful. Yeah. You get it just on what you like, and all of a sudden, it's you've got something really, really musical. And so, our choice of color and the wheels and everything like that, there it was in the dealer, parked on the little fancy stand. We were just, that's awesome. We want one. So
now it's known, I think, fairly well known, those that know you, Michael, that you're very good at getting good deals on cars. And I'm pretty rubbish at it. So next time I'm in the market for an electric car, I'm going to have to bring you along, because I think we kind of got shot on both of our cars, on the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt.
Look, it turns out the trick is simple, right? All you've got to do is pretend like you really don't want the car, show no interest in it whatsoever, don't contribute into any of the forums, just generally give the impression that you don't care whether it comes or it doesn't. And there you go. You get one of the first cars into the country.
That's very true. And interestingly, you were talking about the i3. The i3, of course, is the most efficient electric car on the market today. You have the all-electric version rather than the range extended version, and that was one of the things I noticed about the Outlander. Kind of bringing this back to our kind of circle discussion. The Outlander plug-in hybrid really is not very efficient. I mean, if you think I was using a 12 kilowatt hour battery pack and doing 20 miles with it,
but I wonder what your usable capacity is, because of the whole because it's a plug-in hybrid, it can't make full use of the battery pack because it's got to last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, as a data point on the i3, we're averaging, and I've been driving it too, which would normally be the nail in the coffin for any kind of range record. 5.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So what's that? That's 160 watt hours per mile, 170 watt hours per mile. That's its average, by the way, and that includes trips up the highway. And
wow. Well, I mean, I managed 5 point something today in the Volt.
That's
for
good.
The first time in a long time. I managed really good fuel efficiency in the Volt today. I just got it in the sweet spot. Anyway, let's stop talking about our own personal fleet and let's get on with the news. And the first item in the news, and I'm giving you a bit of a warning here because you're doing the timings like Mark used to do, you're helping me out with that, is that the number of CHAdeMO quick charging stations in the US and in Europe really has positively exploded. Now, this week, Nissan talked about, in the US, said, look, we are on target to install the number of charging stations we said. There's now 633 CHAdeMO DC quick charging stations all across the US. The majority of them, obviously, in Leaf-friendly areas. There are huge swathes of the Great Plains that don't have any CHAdeMO quick charging stations for hundreds of miles. Your cat obviously doesn't like that. That was so wonderfully timed.
Brilliant.
That's going to have to go into the show reel now. So, huge numbers of charging stations. 18 months ago, there was only, 160 in the US. Now there's 633. Most of them, despite what you might think, are not at Nissan dealers. There's only 180 of those 633 at Nissan dealers, which means it's great news for you, Michael, because you're a CHAdeMO-owning Mitsubishi i-MiEV driver.
Yes,
and you don't really want to rock up at a Nissan dealer. And I'm guessing not all Nissan dealers are particularly happy about Mitsubishi i-MiEV drivers turning up.
I imagine not. I don't know. I guess it'll depend from dealer to dealer. But yeah, I actually first, believe it or not, I saw my first ever DC fast charger last weekend. One popped up at there's two Holiday Inns within range of me, and they've both got 50 kilowatt CHAdeMO chargers. They're on the U you I'll find it. I'll find the network. But $7 per hour for charging because it's
Right.
New Jersey. You have to charge by the hour. You can't charge by the quantity. And which I thought was actually kind of okay. I was like, ooh, $7, that's a bit pricey. But when you realize that's 350, that's the equivalent if your car does 30 miles to the gallon, which a little IMEV, regular gas car might do, it's about 2 gallons worth of fuel. So that sort of feels like okay. And it's managed on the Green Lots network, which is a network I hadn't encountered over here. But the whole thing was a great experience. The only tiny drawback is that the space that these two units are in aren't marked out as EV only, and that I imagine could be a catastrophe if you really depended upon it.
Yeah, that would be sucky. Sucky
Yes.
beyond all belief. Let me
Yeah.
show you this image here, which is the number of charging stations that are now present in the US. Now, interestingly, I don't know what's going on with Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and a large chunk of Minnesota. In fact, it looks like all of Minnesota, all of Iowa. There's very few charging stations in New Mexico. Very few charging stations really in the central belt of the US. But there are some really large sort of spaces. Obviously, the whole of the West Coast, pretty much the whole of the East Coast now, and up into parts of Canada as well. So you've even got a CHAdeMO quick charger in somewhere like Nova Scotia. So, I mean, this is great.
It's really starting to happen, right?
It is. It is. And in the UK, also, this week, we had a chat with the CHAdeMO Association, and it turns out that the UK is now leading Europe with CHAdeMO quick charge installations, partly because of Ecotricity. A large number of those charging stations belong to Ecotricity or operated by Ecotricity. It should be said that one of the reasons behind the success of the UK's CHAdeMO quick charge networks is because Nissan has been putting a lot of bucks into it. It's been supporting it and subsidising the charging stations.
What happens next though? Because hasn't the EU just said no to any further CHAdeMO installations?
Well, I think that's going to change. I really do. I mean, if you look at the number of CHAdeMO DC quick charging stations against the number of CCS, one of the countries with with a large number of CCS and not much else is Germany, which of course wants CCS to succeed because CCS is a German standard developed by German automakers. But for the rest of Europe, CHAdeMO seems to be winning hands down. I mean, we do now have combo stations in the UK. There are some combo stations near me. I will put a hand on heart and say, I think in my local vicinity now, in the last 2 weeks, an additional 4 or 5 rapid chargers have gone online. One at our local new hospital that's just been built, one at a local park and ride, one in the centre of town. But they're all charging stations you have to pay for. So £4.50 for a half-hour quick charge. And I'm not going to pay for that because I live locally. I don't need to. But the number of, it's becoming wonderfully ubiquitous. And I don't think the European Union can stop that ball from rolling. It's already rolling. I think it's got enough inertia now that to try and stop that and mandate a new charging standard is just going to be absolutely impossible. And I know in the European Union they have now said, we're going to include CHAdeMO because of the importance and the popularity of it all.
Sounds like the dual ones are the right answer.
Oh well, the triple heads as we call them with
with AC as well.
With the AC
three
ones
phase
as well, yeah. Of course, it is worth noting at this point that the number of CHAdeMO charging stations, most of the CHAdeMO charging stations have AC, and some of them will soon have triple head. CCS as well. But the AC units, we should probably point out, those AC units are Type 2. They look like the Type 2 connector. If you've got a BMW i3 and it doesn't have DC fast charging, please do not plug your car into it. If you've got a BMW or a Volkswagen e-up or a Volkswagen e-Golf and it's got that Type 2 socket on, don't plug in and expect it to have fast charge capabilities unless it's got those 2 extra knobbles on the bottom, because the knobbles on the bottom are what make it go fast and the others just make it go slowly, and then you'll hold it up for everyone else.
Knobbles on the bottom are what makes it go fast.
All right, on to the next story. Tesla patent giveaway happened now about 3 weeks ago, and Autoblog Green went to some of the different automakers in the US and around the world and went, so what do you think of the Tesla patents then? Are you going to start using any? We already know that Nissan and BMW are in talks with Tesla, so they're kind of forgiven for not saying anything, and I assume that Autoblog Green didn't go to them because it already knew that they were working on something. But of the other automakers in the world, the only other automaker other than Nissan and BMW that said, yeah, we're looking at it, was Mahindra in India. And of the automakers that Autoblog Green asked, the only ones who even bothered to respond were General Motors and Honda. Do you know what General Motors said?
Don't care.
Nah, we haven't really looked at it. We don't have anyone working on it full time, and well, we're more interested in their business model than anything else.
Yeah.
Honda, this is the best one. Honda went, we already make the best cars. Electric cars. We're leading electric. We're leading electrified drivetrain technology.
Wow.
Isn't that sad? Or do you think
living in a bubble?
Do you think this is just, do you think the reason that no one responded really, and those that did responded negatively, was because they don't want everyone else to know that they're looking at Tesla patents? I mean, it could swing both ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a big company, you can't sort of turn around and say, actually, yeah, we're going to follow somebody else. I mean, that's what a dreadful message. But also, I mean, to say that we already make the best electric cars, I mean, oh dear, you know. God, I'm sure you could have done a better, worded that better.
For those who are watching at home, if you're watching the stream live, and a lot of people have said, why can't I chat live? I know a lot of people stumble on us on the live YouTube channel, and they watch the YouTube stream and they go, well, where's this chat room you keep talking about? We have a chat room. If you go over to www.transportevolved.com/live, I pressed the right lower third. If you go to that URL now, there is not an ICQ. What do we call it? An IRC chat room. Really old school stuff. You know, when you do the /me and then you can add an action, all of that kind of fun stuff. That is going on in this computer behind me here that you can see. This ancient G3.
High-tech stuff.
High-tech stuff. That's the chat room. Scrolling away in the background. So if you ever see me turn around, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the chat room. So go to the chat room and take part in the show and join in. All right. Hydrogen fuel cell cars from Toyota seem to be the way that Toyota is going. But this week, Toyota announced its EVs. It's going to send neighborhood electric vehicles. We think of those as kind of low speed, non-highway capable EVs. Two particular vehicles, the iRoad, which it's 3-wheel, 2 at the front, 1 at the rear, kind of quasi scooter enclosed thing, which can seat 2 and leans as it goes around the corner. It's kind of like what you'd get if you crossed a Renault Twizy with a Carver. If you remember the Carvers, Michael, and I'm sure you do.
There's always rumours of an electric one.
There is one apparently around the world. I don't know where it is though, somewhere in the world. So it's kind of like a Carver meets a Renault Twizy. And also the CMOS, which, is it CMOS or comms? No, it's the comms. CMOS obviously being the computer thing.
Yes,
is an electric 2-seat runabout designed for older people in Japan, but this is also going to France to take part in a pilot project in Grenoble, where they're essentially going to have a smart city multimodal system. Now, this is something that BMW was touted with the i3, Michael. And I know it works in parts of Germany. Does it work in the US? Then the idea is you get in your car in the morning, you drive to a railway station, you park the car up, it tells you when the next train is, you get on the train, you get off the train at the other end, and maybe you've booked a car to meet you, like a car sharing car, or maybe you've booked a bicycle to use, and then you eventually get to your office and you use 2 or 3 different forms of transport?
Well, you see, because we're normal people, that was one of the first things I disabled on the nav. I'm not paying $500 a month to rent a vehicle to be told to get onto the train. I know I'm supposed to, and I know that that's the most efficient way of doing it. But I'm taking a trip up to Connecticut. I don't want it to tell me to get on the train, even if that is better. It doesn't know that I need a car when I'm up in Connecticut to buzz around. What am I going to do then? That's a
very interesting thing, because, I mean, maybe it's because... Would it be different if you were heading into New York City?
Well, you know what it would do? Actually, I suppose it would, because you know what it would do? It would play on my indecision. Whenever I go into New York City, I can never decide, shall I drive or shall I jump on the train?
Because for those who don't know, you are about, what, half an hour from New York City? 45 minutes? It
depends how fast you drive. I'm 35 miles out, so I'm realistically, I can be in the city in less than an hour if I pick the right time. If I take the train, I have to, from my local, the village that I live, I have to make 2 changes and usually have to walk somewhere. So you're looking at an hour and a half minimum to get into town. But if I try and drive into the city at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, you're also looking at an hour and a half of stop-start, traffic. So the problem is for me, and I'm sure everyone else feels much the same, because we're all pretty much similar folk, as much as we'd like to feel we were different. We just want to, be where we want to be and have the flexibility of being able to park and not have to deal with all of these other people who are just getting in our way. This traffic, and I'm sure we all, all the same. We all forget that we are actually the traffic ourselves. But I can imagine this multimodal thing being very applicable to the idea of being in the city. So, for example, if I were to drive into the city and park up, downtown, and I could, go to a meeting, and then I needed to get to another meeting, and I could jump in one of these instead of a taxi.
That would work, wouldn't
it? It would. I think I'd be drawn to doing that, but I can't imagine. I don't know. Actually, funny. I'm kind of contradicting myself now, aren't I? Because I'm basically saying that, if I could drive effortlessly and smoothly to an out-of-town park and ride kind of scenario, and then jump in one of these instead of having to wait 20 minutes for the next train and then stand around in the train because it's packed full. If I was able to jump in one of these and then scoot off into town side by side with 3 other people, because, we'd be able to lane split, which you can't in the US with bikes, but, in this utopian world. All of a sudden, it sort of makes a bit of sense, actually.
Well, we've got this video of it's called the CHAdeMO system, and it does look fantastic. And the benefit of the CHAdeMO system is that because it encourages everybody to use this multimodal capability, it means that the roads are less congested, which means that buses, etc., can run more freely, more to schedule than perhaps they would in somewhere like London and New York currently. I mean, I avoid now driving through central London. I can drive into London without paying congestion charge because I have a plug-in vehicle. But I mean, it's the same. I mean, earlier this year when I came I drove up from Washington DC to Long Island, and then I came over to you in New Jersey. And from Washington DC to kind of the outskirts of New York took me not very long at all. But then from I can't remember the name of the bridge into New York, heading over towards Long Island, and then from Long Island back out to New Jersey, that was about 10 hours of driving.
Well, you see, this is why this is the I heard this great data point about autonomous driving, something that made me sit up and go, oh, that's why we have to have it. So there's this great statistic. 85% of the roadways that we have aren't currently being used. So even in the busiest time of traffic, there's huge areas of roadway that aren't actually being used because all the cars are driving, with huge gaps between the front of them and the back of them, even though it might feel like bumper to bumper. And everyone's accelerating and decelerating somewhat erratically.
Right.
So the road usage isn't very great. And so one of the arguments for autonomous driving that really lit up a light bulb in my head was that it would allow you to pack far, far, far many more vehicles on the same roadway at a consistent and predictable rate. So, I joke with people that I the reason when I drive any kind of distance, I drive at the speed limit because everyone else is driving 5 or 10 miles an hour over. The reason I do that is because it's like having my own road. There's nobody in front of me. I never have to pull out. Well, seldom. I do sometimes, but you never have to stop or start or slow down or speed up. It's just as if you were on your own with no one around you. And that's exactly what it would be like with autonomous driving. So I think this, going back to this particular, this in-town project where the purpose of this is to solve the problem of too many vehicles coming into the city. And I think the issue would go away if we had autonomous driving and the car was, responsibly understanding that in 500 yards it's going to have to allow somebody to filter in. So, I'm going to modify my speed just ever so slightly just to allow that person to filter in, because then I'm going to get to my destination quicker and they're going to get to their destination quickly and predictably.
There are some amazing solutions, though, aren't there? And I think we do need to look at multimodal, and we do need to look at this smart driving as well. I think
it's interesting. I think you might have swayed me a little.
Well, we're going to come on to smart driving later on in the show, but I think we're going to have to send you on assignment now to do some multimodal transportation solutions. Maybe we need to send you a challenge. Maybe we need to set you a challenge if you're willing to try and set you a challenge. We're going to get you to try out this multimodal at some point, and then we'll speak to BMW and see if they'll help you and figure out if we can get this to work. All right, final piece of news for the segment: Jaguar owners. If I said Jaguar, what would you conjure up as your stereotypical Jaguar owner?
Very wealthy chap. Probably runs his own business, in his 50s, loves to play golf.
All right, not necessarily an electric car advocate, right? Especially not with the V8 engines that you get in some of the Jaguars today.
He has heard about electric cars because he thinks his son saw it on Top Gear.
Right, okay. So, and we're not intentionally being sexist. I think most Jaguar drivers are middle-aged men. I mean, I like driving certain Jaguars. I am a fan, obviously, of the E-Type. I don't own one, of course, because I can't afford anything like that. I have driven one, loved it. Driven some of the XJs recently, and they're really nice cars to drive. Stupidly overpowered, though. Can't hold a candle to a Tesla, but that's just me being a bit of an EV fangirl. But interestingly, we had a story last week from the UK government saying, essentially, Brits are a bit apathetic towards EVs, not really interested in driving them, not really interested in them, hadn't really thought about it. And we found out this week about a survey from WeLoveAnyCar.com, which is owned by WeBuyAnyCar.com. So, and I hate citing them, but it was interesting enough for me to go, okay, I'll do a story on this. The reason being, I have a bit of as a journalist, I have a bit of a problem with websites that are owned by a company who's got a vested interest in getting you to do X, Y, and Z. So there's some journalistic integrity questions here about this survey. But they did a survey and they claim that of the Jaguar owners they questioned, more Jaguar owners, more car drivers than the previous week's governmental survey in the UK. A really high really high proportion of Jaguar owners said, yes, I would buy an electric car tomorrow if Jaguar made one. Which is really interesting, isn't it?
That's an eye-opener. Is that because, their brand is changing with cars like the F-Type?
I think it's changing, but I think it's also because of the Model S. I mean, if you look at the Model S and the Jaguar side by side, my son multiple times have been driving down the road. My son goes, look, there's a Tesla! And I have to double check and go, no, it's a Jag. They look very similar, don't they? The Model S and the XJ.
Well, design-wise, actually, the designer of the S had a hand in with Aston Martin, I want to say. And there's some roots from Aston Martin to Jaguar, I think.
Yeah. So 12%. 12% of the people questioned, that's 467 drivers, said they would switch to an electric Jaguar right now if Jaguar made one. And the question is, Tesla, you need to track these Jaguar drivers down.
Yes. But
then there was another proportion, a really high proportion, 26%, a further 26% said they would consider buying one. They'd kind of want to drive it first kind of thing, but they would certainly consider driving one. Now, as I said, the source of this data is, I would put at the bottom end of my reliability list because I don't know much about how the data was done or carried out, or where the sample size, etc., etc. I do know one of the people who works for them, who writes a column, and I trust her. So there's a little bit of kudos there, but still very, very impressive, right?
Very impressive, yeah. I mean, it's all changing, right?
It is all changing. Right, on to our first ad break. If you are watching this, there should be an ad break here. Sometimes we've had some problems with them. If you're listening, please look at the show notes and go to the Audible ad that we suggest. But also, if you're watching this show live here now and you'd like to know what you can do to help us, is to go and visit the Transport Evolved shop, can't you, Michael? Tell us about the shop. You
can indeed. All right, so I will. We have opened up a store. We've got, since our lovely redesign and our great new graphic, that's me saying it's great, because I love it. We've created a store, and we've got some merchandise in the stores. We've got everything from T-shirts and pens and mugs and all that kind of good stuff. And they are available to buy. So
We've
if
got
you
a
fancy
link on our website,
having a drinking from a Tesla Transport Evolved mug, you have it. But the good news is we get a little bit of the cut for that. So if you want to support the show, both in terms of a little bit of money back to us, and to be able to show your support for the show amongst your co-workers around the coffee machine, pick up a mug.
And I should say that the hoodie, I'm going to show you this hoodie now. If you look at this hoodie here, just click on it on the line on the show here. You look how nice that hoodie is, and it's not quite the official Transport Evolved hoodie, which I've got down here.
But you got to love the children's kind of like baby grow thing.
Oh, the baby grow one is lovely.
Did you see the logo on it?
Yes, I can't remember what it said.
I'm the future of Transport Evolved.
Of Transport Evolved, yes.
So if you know anybody with a small child, a little baby,
then
that'd be a great gift.
So I'm now going to put on the official hoodie. I don't know if this is going to work. Obviously, if you're listening to this at home, it's not going to sound so good.
Rustle, crinkle,
this
crinkle.
is the official Transport Evolved hoodie, and you'll see that the official Transport Evolved hoodie, which is screen printed on the back, and it's got a little embroidered thing on the front here, looks very similar to the fan one. And we did that on purpose so that, you can tell everyone about our show. And yours is colour. Mine's not colour. So there you go. If it's in colour, they don't work for us, but they support us. That's the way we're going to do it. So let's go on with part 2 of the show. Tesla has got permission from the state of Pennsylvania, or rather the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Did you know it was a Commonwealth, Michael?
I did not.
No, it's a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's its official title. To open up to 5 Tesla stores in the state. Now, originally, Pennsylvania, this is one of those stories where you think, yay, Tesla got to open more stores up. This is great. The auto dealer unions are going to be furious. Yay. Originally, the legislation that went through the lower and the upper house, or the lower house, was designed to give Tesla basically carte blanche and go, yep, Tesla, you can open as many stores as you want in the state. It got everyone so upset in the automotive industry, including automakers who wrote in and testified and said, this is crazy, please don't do this. And so they reached a compromise. Working together, the automakers, the auto dealer unions and Tesla all agreed 5 stores in the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's not that big, Michael.
What?
Not really. I mean, it's not.
What do you mean, compared to Europe?
Well, I mean, in terms of population, it's nowhere near California, is it? Or
That is true. That is true. Population-wise, it isn't, but I mean, it's a big place. I mean, you think it's a long way to sort of drive into London. I mean, across Pennsylvania, that's hundreds of miles.
yeah, but I mean, I'm gonna upset someone now. But isn't it full of Amish, and they're not going to be buying Tesla Model S's?
Not
Oh,
yet.
that would be so funny. Amish boys driving Tesla Model S's.
Driving S's.
Aren't the don't the Amish let their teenage boys go out and have a couple of years of being reckless?
I have seen. Yes, I have
re-enter
seen
the church.
I have seen cheap reality shows that yeah, show that kind of thing. I think the problem with the challenge with Pennsylvania is that the distribution of population is very broad. I mean, you have a center like Philadelphia. I mean, if I were Tesla, I'd probably put 2 of the stores in Philadelphia alone. But if you are looking to own a Model S and you're up in the north of Pennsylvania, which is close to Canada, then he says, hastily looking at the map to check his geography.
2 Brits talking about America on Independence Day. Isn't it stupid?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. We should really get the chat room in to help us on this one, because we have some US folk in the chat room, of course.
We're geographically challenged.
Yes, but I mean, the tip of Pennsylvania. I was right. The top corner of the top westernmost corner of Pennsylvania does actually end at the Canadian border. So imagine, I mean, Pennsylvania, what's the width of Pennsylvania? I'm just looking on my map, but it's
about this wide if you're looking on a map.
It's about an inch. It's about an inch on a map about this big. God, this is dreadful. It's got to be, I'm going to say nearly 1,000 miles. It's got to be getting close to 1,000 miles across, which is more than a Tesla Model S battery full. And if you're going to buy one,
I don't get the 1,000 miles across. I think you're way off.
Do you think? Well, I'm reckoning it's 3,000 miles to Chicago from where I live, and PA is about at least a third of that. So, is it 3,000 miles to Chicago? No, it's not. It's about that. No, I've got complete tosh, aren't I? Okay, right.
Okay, it is probably at best about, I don't know. I'm going to measure it now.
We're going to actually have to measure this just to reverse this.
Everyone's turning off now. People are leaving the chat room in protest.
Who are these people? They do not know anything. Somebody in the chat room, tell me, how wide is Pennsylvania?
Someone figure it out and let us know before we.
Yeah. So you got anyway. You got on the west side of Pennsylvania. You've got Pittsburgh, and that is definitely. Why doesn't Apple Maps show me the distance? Why doesn't it have a gaugey thing for distance? Here comes Google. You talk amongst yourself, and I'll figure this out. I'll come back later in the show with an update.
Anyway. Okay. It's good news for Tesla fans in the state of Pennsylvania. It does mean that you can have more Tesla stores and more service centers. So, yay, well done. All right, Volkswagen XL1 has been priced this week in the UK. Did you know how much? Did you hear how much, Michael?
No, but I have been fed data by the research team at the office here, at the New Jersey office of Transport Evolved. It is actually only 160 miles wide.
I've got to get the Transport Evolved team in, who I know is your wife, and say, you need to be careful there, Pamela, that he doesn't overestimate other things.
Yes. Well, no gentleman would ever overestimate anything, would they? Okay, so it's 160 mile wide, so it must be about 80 miles tall. So that's actually, you could go from end to end in a Model S, no problemo. So you know what, Tesla, stick the superchargers and the stores wherever you like, because you could go round in circles and bump into them all.
This is honestly the craziest show I've done in a very long time, and I was feeling really sleepy when I got in. Now I'm really awake, so thank you.
Oh no!
Oh, the XL1. Go on.
Update. It has been reassessed. Pennsylvania has recently been reassessed to be 283 miles wide. In actual fact, at its widest point. That's east to west. North to south is 160. Therefore, 70. 170. Therefore, Pennsylvania is actually about a Model S battery charge.
There you go. Who knew?
Is
and if
that
you
why?
look at all the Tesla superchargers, there are some in Pennsylvania.
There you go. All right. Thank you, data. Thank you.
I'm really flushed now. I'm really embarrassed. Right. XL1, back on track. XL1, £99,000.
Yes.
When it comes to the UK this summer, or later this autumn, actually. And it's going to cost £99,000, but they're only going to import 30.
They're only going to import 30. Good.
Well, they're only making 250 in total. It's a great,
Excellent.
fun car to drive. I wouldn't want to own one, though.
It's a fun car to drive. Have you driven one?
Yes.
And you reckon it was fun?
It was fun from the state. It was fun from the state of you got behind the wheel, okay, and once you're actually moving, it felt fun. It felt futuristic. As soon as you tried to put your foot down, then you kind of went, this feels old-fashioned. But the steering was very direct. It reminded me of driving an old, non-power assisted 1970s, 1960s car. Very direct steering, kind of that slightly go-karty feel to it in terms of the handling. But the acceleration was pants because it was not a very powerful motor. When the engine kicked in, you just had this rumble behind your head, which kind of spoilt everything. But it's got cameras. It's got cameras instead of rear view mirrors. That's got to be worth at least £50,000 right there. Cameras, Michael. Isn't
it just a slightly more up-to-date Honda Insight?
No,
really?
No. Well, maybe a little bit, but okay. I wouldn't actually know. I mean, it was fun to drive for a short period of time. I think I'd probably get quite cross with it after a while. And I think if you look, I've got some footage on one of my machines with me getting very cross with the car not accelerating as quickly as it ought.
Okay, and I know we're gonna talk about another new vehicle with a suspiciously high.
Yeah, well, let's go straight onto it. The BMW i8.
So, okay. Maybe I don't understand how manufacturers do this, set the prices. But is there anybody out there, and I ask that kind of rhetorically because I know that people have put their name down, but is there anybody out there who would choose an XL1 over a Tesla Model S?
No. I mean, I think people who are doing it, they obviously like Will Smith films. It reminds me a little bit of the Audi in iRobot. And I think the Audi in iRobot is essentially the kind of the dream version of the XL1. And of course, Audi and BMW are the same company. So
but that was an electric car.
It was.
It wasn't
electric, and it went upside of buildings.
It did. That's true.
I would pay £99,000 for a car that went vertically up the side of a building.
Well, anyone would. I mean, talk about a way of getting around traffic. But okay, and the reason I sort of raised that question is that the same thought struck my mind. Hit me when I saw the BMW i8, and okay, it's an absolutely stunning looking car. In fact, it's for me, it's the best car I've seen. I was struggling to find out when I'd seen such a good car, and I don't actually think I have. I think it's the best looking car I've ever seen. It's got something of one of the newer Lamborghinis. It's got curves that it's just wonderful, right? And the interior was just beautiful. But the drivetrain notwithstanding, $135,000 for a two-seater car with modest acceleration, modest performance. It seems too high compared to other vehicles that are available, or is this a ridiculous conversation? Because to others a Model S might be a ridiculous purchase.
Part of it is because people are not ready. Not everyone is ready to make that switch to electric yet. And I think the other thing that you're missing is both the XL1 and the i8 are cars that you're never going to see on the road in a regular situation.
And is that it?
I think this is the collector's car. This is, I mean, this is a halo car. They are both halo cars. And they're made by the automaker in limited volume. I mean, you only have to think about some of the cars that Mercedes-Benz make. The same effect. How many of the higher end Mercedes-Benz cars are actually sold on a regular basis?
Yeah, not too many, right?
How many SLS AMGs are actually sold? How many SLS AMG e-cells will be sold? They make those cars to sell the lesser cars. So the i8 is a halo car for the i3, but it's also a halo car for some of the other plug-in cars that BMW is bringing out. So like the X5 plug-in that they're making for China. It's that same kind of feel.
Same.
And it's going to be the same with Infiniti, and its its halo car is going to push people towards electric. And Nissan this week, Andy Palmer said, look, the ZEOD, the Zero Emissions on Demand, that we've just debuted at Le Mans, is going to become the byword for our performance at Nissan. So ZEOD is going to be a feature of higher end performance Nissans. And the association will be, it's the Le Mans Delta Wing, but actually it's that's where it comes from, and people will buy that association. So I think BMW i8 starts at $135,700. You then have to pay a $950 mandatory delivery destination fee on top, and if you want the launch spec trim, which is essentially a special trim level, that's another $10,000 on top. So you could get a base model, you could get a fully kitted out Model S for that, plus a Nissan Leaf.
Yeah, you see, I think I'm going to order one. I'm going to put my name down on, for the base one, the basic one with the kind of recycled interior like we have on the i3. And I think I'm going to order it.
Why?
Well, look how it worked out with the i3. All I had to say was, I had to pay the same money as and it kind of came together. So I think, on balance, mind you, it's only got 23 mile range.
It's only got 20 miles, and it's not a proper plug-in.
Forget it.
You'd go back to burning petrol, drive. And you wouldn't want it. You wouldn't want it. And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Once you go electric, you don't want to go back.
You can't go back.
All right, talking of Teslas, though, we did mention Tesla quite a lot in that. Third generation car won't be made of aluminium or aluminum. People have been basically, by the way, I must say this. People have been saying to me, why do you keep saying aluminum? You're British. I say, yes, I am British.
You're multilingual. You're a person of the world.
I'm a person of the world. I'm married to an American and I'm half Canadian, so I can say aluminum. I can even sing the Bare Naked Ladies song that goes by the same name. I'm not going to, but I could if you wanted me to. Anyway, aluminum or aluminium, depending on which way you want to say it. The Tesla Model 3, as I'm going to start calling it.
Yeah.
That's what I've decided to call it.
3E. Sounds good.
The Tesla Model 3 will have some other construction because aluminum is too expensive. That's the opinion of Chris Porrett, who is one of Tesla's engineers, top engineers. He's talking with Auto Express this week, or Autocar, and said, look, we're going to have to use something a little bit more appropriate. Other information that is pertinent here is that he confirmed, look, we are shooting for the same kind of price as a 3 Series BMW. That is our target market in terms of price. What do you make of that, Michael?
That seems to fall in line with what we've heard before in terms of pricing. But you know what? That it won't be made of aluminium. I think that's leading us to think that it will be made of steel, but I don't think it will. The i3 is the first plastic car I've ever owned.
Right.
I mean, I've had cars before with, plastic trim around the front, plastic trim around the rear, but I've never had a car where everything is plastic. And let me tell you, compared to the Ford, it's a lot tougher. I mean, my Ford's I've had it a year, and it's got little dints and dents and scratches and bumps and nicks and all sorts all over it. I mean, it really is, when you get within a few feet of it, it looks like you've been trying to pebble dash it. I think they're going to be smart about this, because they've got to do something different, I think, than, because if they go ahead and produce something that's a carbon copy of a BMW, but with the Tesla badge on it and a battery in the floor, I can't see them being able to really shine. They're going to have to do something really clever, I think, to differentiate them. That's just my thought.
Well, what do you think? What do you kind of, because
I'm thinking carbon composites and plastic.
Because it's still really expensive, and Tesla will have to figure out a way of making it cheaper if that's the case. And I think the range will make a difference as well.
They will. But right now, you look at the Model S. That's a really big battery compared to what everybody else is doing. And I know there's other reasons for why other people do small batteries, but in a modest size car where you can't necessarily afford to throw $20,000, $30,000 at the battery, they've got to do something else. I think we heard the rumors of BMW talking to Tesla. Well, BMW have invested an awful lot in carbon composite plastic technology. I wonder if that conversation was going in the direction we suspected.
Maybe it was, and there is that tie in there. You're quite right. And so, you do have a point there. I mean, what if BMW and Tesla cooperate on batteries and composites and if you're talking about the Model 3 being smaller, about 20% smaller, I think is some of the figures, and the price point it's being targeted at the Audi A4 and BMW 3 Series kind of space. It's going to be that A4 3 Series size, and you cannot get a massive battery pack in there. So you need, if you want that 200-mile range, to make the car lightweit. You are quite right. There we go. So we've solved that one.
Carbon composites.
There we go. All right. Well, let's move on to the
next.
On to the next story. We've kind of just solved that one then. All right. Tesla Model S. How fast does it really charge on a supercharger? Now, really great guy on YouTube by the name of Bjorn Nyland. We've tried to get him on the show, but he's sort of said, oh, well, I kind of prefer doing things on my own. I don't like working with other people. I just kind of want to work on my own, which is fair enough. He's done some amazing videos. And he filmed recently and put up online a video of his Tesla Model S supercharging in Europe. Now, lots of people keep saying there's no superchargers in Europe because they all use Type 2, and Type 2 is not a supercharger. Type 2 supercharger connectors are modified Type 2 connectors, so they can use Tesla supercharging. And there's special switching inside the car to switch between DC and AC connections depending on the signals that are being sent from the charging station to the car. Same as it is in the States, actually. It just uses a different connector. Anyway, he showed this car supercharging from empty to full, 10% empty, all the way up to full. And it taught us two really important things. First of all, you can add about 50 miles of range in about 10 minutes, which is insane if it's empty. Absolutely insane. The other thing is that your 80% charge is reached after about 40 minutes. And then that last bit, so he stayed until his car was 100% full. And the last bit took over an hour. So it really does reiterate the point. If you are charging a Tesla Model S, any car, the first bit's quick, the last bit's not. If you haven't really done any quick charging of any of your vehicles, have you?
Well, no, I've had a total quick charging experience of approximately 10 minutes testing out this local one we just discovered.
On the iMEV?
On the iMEV, yeah. And, it was, it was great, actually. It was kind of wicked to see nearly 30 kilowatts pouring into the iMEV. And by the way, the iMEV was sat quietly, no big fans and air conditioning kicking in. Its batteries didn't get hot in the short time that it ran. Oh
no, that's very interesting because the British iMEVs, as soon as you plug in a rapid charger, the fans turn on.
That's interesting because this was a hot day, and I was fully expecting as soon as I hit start and the current to rocket up that the AC unit would kick in and start circulating cold air around the batteries, but nope.
Well, as I understand it, the British one, what it does is it takes the air from inside the battery pack and basically expels it into the cabin. So on a hot day, you don't want to use a CHAdeMO quick charger with a Mitsubishi iMEV because you're going to get a hot cabin.
Huh.
But maybe it works differently in the American version, because essentially the iMeave is 3 different vehicles. It's the Japanese version, the European version, and the American version. All different, different. Okay, time for another ad break. And I'm going to talk to you this time about the paper. Do you get the paper, Michael?
Every Sunday morning.
Okay, tell me about the paper.
So paper is this great tool that we set up on the site to give you a week's worth of lovely transport evolved goodness into your inbox. It takes the week's news and wraps it all up, gives you the headlines, gives you that opportunity on a Sunday morning to sit there with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, sit in bed, pick up a tablet and just spool through catching up on what you might have missed during the week.
And we've got last week's one up here so you can see it. I'm going to scroll through and see all the news of the week. Because we produce a lot of content, don't we, in a week?
We produce more content than I thought we did. I mean, you're producing 5
between 4 and 5 a day.
Day. So if you subscribe to paper, you can get everything. You can get that catch up on a Sunday morning when you're not rushing around and when life's a bit slower, and you can catch up with all the EV goodness.
And it helps us because it keeps our traffic up at the weekend as well, which is good.
It is good.
So you can go to the www.transportevolved.com and then click on the paper link, and then you can subscribe to paper, and you will be helping us out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on to the next story of the next segment.
Okay.
There's only one problem with this. I have disconnected it, and I have a feeling this next story is the one that happened today. There was an accident, wasn't there?
There was an accident.
California.
Do you want to cover it, or shall I?
Yeah, okay. So Tesla Model S was stolen last night in Los Angeles, and taken on a joyride through Hollywood, essentially. Took out a police cruiser. 7 miles later, collided with a load of other vehicles. Was traveling well over 100 miles an hour, according to various reports. Hit something, went up in the air, hit a lamppost. On hitting the lamppost, the car appears to have split in 2. The back end of the Teslas ended up in the front of the central synagogue. I think it's what we've discovered. And the main part of the car landed on the ground, caught fire. The rest of the story, obviously, is kind of self-explanatory. And there's been not yet a huge amount of backlash, but there has been a little bit from people going, "Oh, Teslas are dangerous. Oh, Teslas aren't safe. Oh." Now, we just need to sit down and calm down, people, because the facts of this accident are still being investigated by the police. There are people seriously, critically ill in hospital, and we have had reports. They're non-corroborated reports. Some of our competitors are saying we've got a death confirmed. Their sources are Twitter, and frankly, I'm not willing to take that data from Twitter. The police haven't said anything yet. Tesla hasn't said anything yet. I expect both of them to say something soon. Obviously, when they do, we'll bring you that story. But this is a tragedy about people stealing cars and joyriding more than it is about the fact that it's a Tesla Model S which caught into flames and split apart on impact. Because if you look back last year to the story in Mexico when there was a similar incident of a Tesla Model S catching air, hitting a post, a concrete bollard, and bursting into flames. The same kind of situation there. There is absolutely no way on this planet that any amount of physical or computer testing could prevent this kind of catastrophe from happening, unless someone was at the wheel, that someone was a computer. So until we have autonomous driving, people are going to steal cars, they're going to joyride them, and they're going to do stupid things with them. So
I've watched cars over since I've been driving cars. My first car I had 45 horsepower. My current weakest car, my little iMeave, has got 70.
70, because it's 50 kilowatts. So yeah, it's about
Right.
50. It's about 70.
Okay.
Yeah, 70
So
horsepower.
it's about the same. It's okay. It's not like a Golf GTI, which was kind of like the super mega car in the 80s. We've got rules against speed, but we don't have rules against acceleration. And long may that be the case, because I love it. But do you think it's time for some kind of organized control over cars
Possibly.
being able to be disabled either by the owners or by the authorities?
I
And
don't know.
how do you do that?
And it becomes a very kind of questionable thing, doesn't it? Whether you go into this police nanny state or whether you say, okay, if this car has clearly been stolen, I can stop my own car from being driven anywhere, or I can turn on, the sirens or whatever. In this case, my biggest question is, how did somebody steal a Tesla Model S? And the reports say it was stolen from a dealer forecourt, which doesn't make sense because Tesla doesn't have any dealers.
No, that's true. That's a good. Well, actually, unless it was a second-hand
Unless it was
one.
a second-hand one and it was sitting there with the keys in, which it may have been.
Yeah,
But
somebody's taken
the
the key.
Tesla won't turn on unless you're there with the key.
Right.
And as soon as you get out of the driver's seat, it turns off. So we're assuming that somebody got in the car with the key and drove with the key. So the first question is, how did they get the key?
I think they stole it, because I think, if I understand this correctly, the stuff I've heard recently, the only way of stealing these cars these days is to get the key. And nowadays, people, it's not a big deal for your crim who wants to run off with somebody's flash car.
Right.
Instead of what they used to do, mucking around trying to break windows or fish the lock and then break the ignition key and stuff like that. It's much easier now. They just throw a brick through the house window, grab the keys, which are usually on a desk by the door or something like that, and they're away.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Here's a situation where we know that the accident would just not have happened if the authorities or the owner or the dealer was able to to disable the car and have it simply just slow down. Because I mean, all of the cars, in fact, except for, let me think, no, the two top cars that I have, the i3 and the Ford, they both have computer controlled braking. So, and by that I mean they're both able to put the brakes on by themselves
to keep you safe.
Well, for various reasons. So the Ford, you touch the brake, and as you slow down, it transitions from regen to regular braking. The i3, will slam the brakes on if it thinks it's appropriate. But the point is that the tech is there. This is just software.
Maybe this is going to be the next thing and I fully expect Tesla to go, look, okay, we're now adding emergency braking to this car.
Well, it's going to be some. I mean, I think the S actually does have the valet mode that the Roadster had. The Roadster had a valet mode that we can actually, courtesy of the OVMS project, we can actually engage that remotely and kill or significantly reduce the power of my Roadster if it was to get stolen.
And the Renault Twizy is the same. You can actually through OVMS, you can turn your Twizy, because the Twizy doesn't really have any safety features. It has an immobilizer, but the doors just get in it and sit in there.
Yeah. So the next question becomes, who has control of this capability? Because what's going to happen. People are going to run to the hill screaming because they're going to be terrified to go out in their car because some criminal will get hold of the tech and be able to just stop cars randomly and steal from people or mug people or whatever.
The sad part of this all is, and I'm probably going to be unpopular for saying this, there's potentially somebody that's already died as a consequence of this. There are people who we know are critically and seriously and critically ill in hospital, multiple casualties. This car left an absolute trail of destruction behind it. As it sped through LA. It was early in the morning. It destroyed a police cruiser. I don't know if it hit any bystanders who weren't in cars, but it caused absolute carnage. And at the end of the day, you can replace a Tesla Model S. Tesla are making, what, a couple hundred of them now a month? That is the easy part. You cannot replace a human life, even if they are a criminal. You cannot replace that person's life. And I'm one of these few people who I think who says, look, even if someone has been really stupid and they've committed something like Grand Theft Auto, and they crash the car and they are seriously ill, yes, they deserve it in the sense of their own stupidity caused it, but at the end of the day, they're a human being, and there has to be some level of compassion there. So I can imagine Tesla coming along and going, look, we don't want any of our cars to ever be stolen like this ever again. I think there's only ever been 4 or 5 Tesla Model S's stolen in the history of the car being in production, which is pretty impressive.
I think there's an opportunity, isn't there, for Tesla to sort of pave the way here and say, okay, this happened. We saw what the response was to the road debris issue. They went above and beyond, I think, to resolve that. I could seriously see, Tesla calling a meeting today and saying, okay, let's figure this one out, and let's work something out. Maybe it's an opt-in program. I have to be honest. If on my Roadster, like I can enable and disable the radio communications between the Roadster and Tesla, if I could enable a feature that said allow Tesla to disable my car, I'd enable it.
Yeah, and then of course you'd be into obviously then there would be the security question of, could somebody hack my car and stop it remotely and cause an accident that way? But it is a really important feature, I think, moving forward for self-driving technology. We know Musk wants to have what he calls the autopilot features on cars. This could be an extension of it. One of the biggest, simplest solutions that I think Tesla could implement is actually to introduce a PIN code, like you saw in some of the old Fords and GM cars of the last decade, where you get in and you've got this lovely touchscreen display, and you enter a passcode, or you draw a picture on the screen, or you do something else that means that as your key, there is some other way of identifying you. Maybe
that's classic security, isn't it? Ownership of something and knowledge of something.
Yeah, exactly. So then you because the problem with cars is cars don't have 3-factor authentication, do they?
That is true.
We have
Although
a car
I can't
key.
imagine waiting for a text message to come to our phone when I'm in a hurry. I'm like, send.
Well, this
send.
happened classically the other day. Okay, my Nissan Leaf had to go to the body shop to have some work done on it. Just a bit of a respray job. My wife went and picked the Leaf up last weekend. Now, I had taken the Leaf to the garage, so I had given them my key. They'd given me a courtesy Nissan Leaf. They'd given me their courtesy car, which was signed written up with the garage name. And last Saturday, my wife took that car back and drove, and of course she had her set of keys. Her set of keys still had the original Nissan Leaf key for my car on it, because you get 2 keys of the car. She got to the garage, she paid the bill. They gave her, the service department had left for the day, so it was one of the sales team, gave her what they thought was her car key. She got in the car, she drove home, the car started because she had her key for my car. She got home, she handed me the key, and I went, that's not my car key. That's somebody else's car key. Identical car key, but I knew it wasn't mine. It didn't work with my car. And it turned out that somebody at the dealership just absent-mindedly picked up the wrong key and handed it to her.
It'd be interesting to see if this story unfolds then, and that turns out to be the reason this car got stolen.
Now, had it been, exactly, but if I'd got that key, and there was some other way of proving that I was me, that I could use my car in an emergency without the key, or conversely, somebody grabs my key and sits in my car, they don't have my shared secret. They don't know what that extra bit of information is. I pay extra for that. And I mean, you think about it, you get in a car, you put your seatbelt on, how long would it really take you to enter your passcode?
Oh, it would be a doddle, because that would be the first thing the car would ask. But you know what? I think that technology would pay for itself. I bet the insurance companies would give you a bonus for that.
And in fact, in Israel, I'm just going to add this, in Israel, that's a mandatory feature. You already have to have that in Israel. If you go to Israel and you drive a car in Israel, they all have that feature. It is mandated by law because they have such a problem in Israel of Israeli registered cars being stolen over the border into Palestine, into the occupied territories, or wherever you want to call it. And I'm going to be completely politically incorrect there. Cars being stolen, taken outside of the bounds of Israel, fitted with bombs, and then driven back again. So they've actually now implemented the mandate. If you have a car in Israel, you have to have this little device. It sits down by your steering wheel, and you have to punch in your code. And when I was there test driving, obviously the better paced cars, it was annoying, but I can now see the benefit of it.
Yeah. Well, here's a bit of trivia question for you. Which electric vehicle implemented that very feature?
I know, so it's not fair.
Oh, all right then.
Can I say?
Sure.
It was the EV1.
Well done.
Yeah, EV1. All right, Toyota this week, talking about safety, crikey. NHTSA has been asked this week by Toyota for an exemption for FVMSS 305. Now, FVMSS 305 is a safety protocol mandated by law in the States. NHTSA obviously implements it or polices it. And it's a standard that means any car with a high voltage drivetrain must have a safety disconnect in the event of an accident which cuts power between the battery pack and the motor, or the battery pack and the other parts of the car. Now, Toyota's going, hi, NHTSA, we don't want to do that in our fuel cell vehicle, our hydrogen fuel cell sedan. No, we don't think that's a good idea. It will essentially mean our car just becomes a paperweight if we do that. It doesn't work. Tried it, not going to work. So instead, Toyota is proposing that it just basically insulates all of the high voltage wires a little bit more. And also that it puts metal shielding around everything. Am I missing something? Do we think this is going to work?
Doesn't metal's a good insulator, right? Or is it the other way around? I forget. Wait a minute. Yeah, so you wrap a metal insulator around a good bit of regular stuff to protect it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But in an accident, when things when things are getting ripped in half, and
if this was a hydrogen fuel cell car, it would have
mind you, if it's a hydrogen fuel cell car, it's probably not going to be going very fast anyway. I mean, they're all a bit slow.
All right,
as it is. So.
Moving on before we get into trouble. FCV sedan admits Toyota will only sell if governments, pony on up and start paying sensible incentives to customers. And in Japan, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are going to get the same as EVs. And at the moment, Toyota's going, yeah, that's not going to be enough. We need more incentives.
So Toyota is basically saying the reason we make and sell a fuel cell vehicle in the US is so that we can get the credits that come with a fuel cell vehicle, because you get extra credits for 150 plus mile range, and you get extra credits for fast refueling. So we're going to cash in on that, but we're going to moan about it because we want even more.
Well, what the difference is, Michael, is that they're saying, obviously, carb credits are only in California, they're only in the US. But
any of the ZEV.
The ZEV credits, yeah. ZEV states, of which, you're quite right, there is an increasingly large number. But Toyota is talking about incentives to purchasers, people who want to get rebates when they buy the car. But you're right, eventually they will find their way back to Toyota.
This is kind of a bit... what's the term? I don't know. I was struggling for it, but it's somebody's forgotten where this rumor started, right? So no one's asking for hydrogen fuel cell cars, because why would you? They're expensive to produce. They're relatively polluting compared to the electric alternatives, and there's no refueling infrastructure. So who wants them? Well, no one really. The only reason, in my mind, that they are produced is because they're a shortcut to some ZEV credits. So the manufacturers produce them from the ZEV credits. It's as though someone's forgotten that that's the reason, and that it's not actually that the government want anybody to manufacture hydrogen cars, because the government don't want hydrogen cars. The government want low emission vehicles, whatever that might mean. not nobody's actually asking for hydrogen. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, "God, I wish I could power my car on hydrogen. That would be so much more something that I can't quite put my finger on right now."
So much more explosive. You're quite right. All right, Nissan last week took its autonomous drive Leaf. This is so cool. On a little trip to celebrate the opening of a new tunnel in Japan. This is interesting and fun for multiple reasons. The fact that roads are still being opened somewhere in the world fills me with actually quite happiness, because here in the UK we're not building roads anymore. And in the US, well, last time I was in the US, I was convinced I'd wrecked a couple of wheels going through potholes. So new road in Japan through a tunnel, no less, joining the Kanagawa prefecture with Tokyo. And the governor of Kanagawa was there, and he was a passenger in this autonomous drive Leaf. He'd been a passenger before. Japan has essentially got this robotic highway that it's going to let Nissan drive these cars up and down, which will eventually, which will have regular cars on them as well. But the car looks exactly the same as the same car we saw last year, but so much more competent. The guy, and how do I know that? The guy sitting behind the wheel, the engineer sitting behind the wheel, the first time we saw him was like this. His hands were 10 and 2, and he was almost holding the wheel, staring intently ahead, nodding, slowly, and being very serious and very kind of unanimated. This time, he was chatting away, he was pointing up down the road, and he was pointing at little bits of the car technology. So I think that's probably the best indication we've seen that self-driving cars are coming. They're doing better. The video's on the website, so go and watch the video. But you wanted to pull up another autonomous drive story this week, which is not in the show notes, but it's from Hyundai, North Korean manufacturer. South Korean.
It's the same, isn't it? Surely. No. Is it as wide or is it as tall as Pennsylvania?
We should call this show Geographically Challenged. South Korean company. Stupid Nikki. South Korean company, obviously, they wanted to demonstrate their autonomous drive technology. It's not actually autonomous driving, is it, Michael?
No, this is technology we've sort of seen before, but kind of tuned up and refined. So this is a combination of their lane change technology, their lane assist, and their active cruise control that will go very much down, right down to zero, tweaked a bit. Normally these systems, disable themselves automatically if they think that the owner has just climbed out of the sunroof, which is exactly what the owner did, or the driver. In this example, they got a string of cars and they set them off on a track, following around a curve, a circular track, and one by one, each driver climbs out of the car through the sunroof and jumps onto a pickup truck driving alongside into the bed of this pickup truck. And then the car at the front, who's got the dubious honor of being the person who's going to get rear-ended if this goes horribly wrong, basically just slowed down and stopped quite abruptly. And
the truck stopped.
Oh, right, the truck. So at the front.
The driver, the stunt driver in the front, very famous stunt driver, I've forgotten his name. He puts his blindfold on, he does do that. I notice he crosses his arms in proper "I'm going to kill myself" mode, which is obviously that protects your arms in the case of an accident, stops your thumbs from being broken by the airbags.
Good to know.
Problem is you don't have enough time normally to let go of the steering wheel. So he put his blindfold on, and they just stopped the truck. His car stopped, and all these other cars stopped, and that was it.
No fuss, no trauma.
Very clever, but it was highly staged, and Hyundai did say, "Please don't do this.
Please don't try this at home.
Our technology won't do this normally." No, which fair enough, really, to be.
But this is great, because this. I mean, I was really surprised because some of that tech is in the i3, the ability to see ahead and come up to a complete stop if the traffic ahead of you stops, and it does it quite nicely, and then sets off again when the road clears. This can be problematic if you're at an intersection and the car in front turns right Just think about that for a moment. But it works, and I feel quite confident in the i3 because you're just steering the thing for the most part. But it does disconnect. If you take your hands off the steering wheel, it gets nervous after a while, starts to get worried. It can't. There's no internal camera, so it can't see that you may have passed out or something like that. But at a certain point, it stops, and alarm bells go off, and it basically says that you're on your own now, which is kind of interesting because you'd thought the response would be stop the car, but doesn't.
Yeah, no. Well, there you go. All right, penultimate story. Nissan obviously has a luxury brand, Infiniti. Infiniti is known for not really liking EVs, or rather, Joseph Donation, the current boss of Infiniti, doesn't really like EVs. He was the one who put the kibosh on the Emerge car, Emerge E. And he was also the one who said that we're not going to make the LE. But Andy Palmer, who's higher than him, because he's at Nissan, he was saying, no, we might not build the Emerge. We probably won't build that. But we are going to build a Halo car with some form of hybridized drivetrain. He wouldn't say if it was going to be a plug-in or not. And, this is the most important thing, our engineers are busy at work with the next generation Nissan Leaf drivetrain to make some form of electrified Infiniti. Oh, and it will have wireless charging. So either Andy Palmer has missed all of the memos cancelling all of those projects, or it's back on, which is great news.
It's good news.
And it also hints a little bit as to what the Nissan Leaf is going to have, because obviously if the Infiniti LE does come and it's going to have this better battery pack and it's going to be longer range and etc., that does kind of really start to cement the idea that Nissan's going to make a really rather spectacular second generation Leaf. Because what people are calling second generation Leaf isn't really second generation Leaf. It's just a tweak.
It's the mid-range refresh.
It was a mid-cycle refresh with some new technology, but because it was an electric car, because it was a new kind of segment, it did look like a brand new car, but it's not. In my opinion, if it looks the same as the previous car and there's not really any changes externally, and there's only a few internal changes, then it really is just a mid-cycle update, even if it's a big mid-cycle update, which is what we got with Nissan. So that's good news. That's very good news. And I'm waiting to see what Infiniti comes up with next. And finally, It is July 4th today, the day that Americans celebrate us not coming along going, oh, hello.
Hello. Pay us taxes.
Pay us some taxes. Would you be a good chap? There you go. Our mad king would like his taxes back. No, I didn't say taxis. I said taxes. Pay us or we kill you now. That kind of thing. We were kicked out. I nearly said we kicked them out. That shows where my brain is, doesn't it?
That's what they thought.
That's what they thought. We're back anyway. But I thought it would be a good end to the show to see what we're celebrating with independence from petroleum, which is essentially what we do here at Transport Evolved. We're beyond petroleum, beyond petrol, beyond diesel, and smart driving technologies in whatever form and whatever fuel. And I think we should probably say I do support all kinds of alternative fuels. I'm not just electric. I need to know more about hydrogen. I need to know more about air. I need to know more about pigeon poop and how that can power a car. If it's alternative fuel, I'll be interested and I'll drive it. So, Michael, what would you do to celebrate independence from oil?
Oh, that's a tough question. What would I do to celebrate independence from oil? I would take a drive out in my EV later this evening when the sun goes down and it's all quiet and all you can hear is the crickets. And you can have the windows open and you can go blasting through town without making any noise.
That is a nice feeling. And I do like doing that as well. I think I'm going to celebrate by looking at how few times I've visited the petrol station. It is a nice feeling. And our Chevy Volt, for example, has not visited the petrol station in 800 miles.
That's good.
Which is good. And we've only
pretty much an EV.
We've only used 1.3 UK gallons in those 800 and some miles.
Wow.
So
that's
how
good.
It
should be.
And our Leaf has now got 70. I think now it has just about rolled over 59,000. I need to check the odometer, but I think we're getting perilously close to the end of our warranty period. So
decisions.
After that point, we'll see what happens. Anyway, I hope if you are celebrating in the US or wherever you are in the world, you have a very happy day. Go and have some fun with some fireworks and barbecues. And we will be back next week at the usual time of the somewhere roundabout between 5 p.m. British Summer Time and 7 p.m. British Summer Time, depending on what people are doing with school things and whatnot. But we'll have some good guests and we'll have some good chat. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our show on YouTube. You can go to www.com/YouTube/Transport Evolve. That should take you to our channel. You can follow us on Twitter at Transport Evolve. And you can go to our website, www.transportevolve.com, subscribe to our paper, subscribe to our RSS feeds, go to the shop, subscribe to our YouTubes and podcasts and everything else, and then it will all be happy and we'll just fill your life full of stuff.
And if you really like the site, tell a friend.
Yes, and donate. We have a donation link, and we do now have Bitcoin, don't we, Michael?
We will do at some point when I get around to loading that up.
We have Bitcoin. So if you want to donate in Bitcoin, ping me a message and I'll tell you where to send it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's future.
That's future. We're all about the future here. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And as always, don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Bye.